I work at a consulting company in Jakarta, occupying the 9th floor of a 12-story building. My office is a large space filled with cubicles separated by short partitions. Usually, by late afternoon, the floor is already empty, leaving only the security guard in the lobby. But I am one of the employees who often leaves last, buried under piles of reports and deadlines. That night, around 11:30, I was still at my desk, accompanied only by the cold hum of the AC and the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. The silence was overwhelming. From the wide glass window beside my desk, I could see the city lights twinkling in the distance. Sudirman Street, usually choking with traffic, now stretched almost deserted, broken only by the occasional car sliding past. It was strange. Sitting in that vast room, I could almost hear my own breath echoing against the glass walls. As I typed, I suddenly heard the sound of a printer turning on. The noise came from the small room near the pantry, about 5 meters from my desk. I frowned, certain I hadn't sent anything to print. Curiosity pulled me out of my chair, my footsteps soft against the carpet as I approached the sound. The closer I got, the more I smelled a faint mix of fresh ink and something sharp, almost like burnt paper. The printer was indeed working, spitting out sheet after sheet of paper. I grabbed the stack, hoping it was just a delayed job, but every page was blank, marked only by faint streaks like repetitive scribbles. As I flipped through them, I noticed dark smudges on several sheets, smudges shaped like fingerprints pressing from the inside of the paper. Uneasy, I placed the papers back and turned off the machine, but as soon as I stepped away, I heard the creak of a chair coming from the farthest cubicle. The sound was unmistakable, like someone settling into a seat and slowly shifting. I froze, breath caught in my throat. It should have been the only one left on this floor. I turned my head toward the cubicle. A faint glow spilled from a computer screen there, illuminating the desk. The monitor displayed a login window with a username that sent a chill down my spine. It was Arif's, my colleague who had died in an accident 2 years ago right after working late on this very floor. The screen seemed to wait, expectant, as though someone invisible was about to type a password. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. "It's just a glitch," I whispered, but the air around me felt heavier, pressing against my chest. The office, once so familiar, suddenly seemed to shrink, its shadows closing in. Fear urged me to pack up and leave, but something else, a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, rooted me to the spot. And deep down, I knew the night had only just begun. The glow from Arif's monitor lingered in the darkness, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. My heart pounded as I tried to convince myself that someone from IT had mistakenly left the account active. But that thought shattered when the cursor on the screen began to move on its own. Slowly, deliberately, it hovered over the password field. I didn't see anyone at the desk, yet I could almost imagine a pair of invisible hands resting on the keyboard. I stumbled backward, clutching my phone. The signal bar showed no reception. Strange, considering I always had strong coverage here. The silence in the office deepened until I could hear the buzz of the fluorescent lights. And then, faintly, a whisper echoed across the room. It wasn't clear at first, just a low hiss carried through the cubicles. But the more I strained my ears, the more it took shape. "Why did you stay?" My knees weakened. I glanced around, half expecting someone to appear behind the partitions. The cubicles stretched endlessly, each identical, each filled with the faint reflection of computer screens. Then one chair rolled slightly to the side, another creaked, and soon it was as if the entire floor was slowly coming to life, though no one was there to occupy the space. I backed toward my desk, desperate to pack my bag, when I noticed something strange on the glass window. From the inside, the reflection should have shown only me and the rows of empty desks, but instead, I saw dozens of blurred silhouettes, figures sitting, typing, standing, as if the office was fully staffed. Their shapes flickered faintly, like a distorted video playing behind the glass. I dared to turn around, but the room was still empty. My reflection was alone. Yet in the glass, the ghostly office workers continued their endless routine. One figure stood out among them, a man in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up, standing directly behind me. My breath caught as I recognized the outline of Arif, his face obscured by shadow. The reflection smiled faintly, though the real space behind me was empty. Then the overhead lights flickered violently, plunging the office into near darkness before buzzing back on. When the lights stabilized, the reflection was gone, but the seat at Arif's old cubicle was now turned toward me, as if someone invisible was watching. My instincts screamed for me to leave. I grabbed my bag and headed for the exit, my shoes echoing too loudly in the vast emptiness. But when I reached the glass door leading to the emergency stairs, my access card wouldn't scan. I tried again and again, but the red light kept flashing. And behind me, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, as though someone was following me through the sea of cubicles. The heavy footsteps drew closer, echoing between the cubicles like a drumbeat from the dark. My throat tightened as I pressed my access card against the reader again. Red! A shrill beep echoed in the silent hall. The card was useless now. I banged the door with my fist, but it would not budge. The office behind me seemed to grow larger, swallowing sound and space, trapping me on the 9th floor. I turned my head slowly. The rows of cubicles stretched endlessly, bathed in the dim glow of half-dead neon lights. Between them, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow gliding low across the carpet. Not walking, sliding. It was headed directly toward me. My breath hitched, my chest pounding as though my ribs would crack. Whoever or whatever was in that office, it wasn't human anymore. In desperation, I ran toward the elevators. The hallway leading there felt longer than usual, as though the building itself was stretching to keep me inside. When I finally reached the panel, I slammed the button over and over. Nothing. The display above showed no floors, only a flickering -9, glowing red like a wound. The air around me grew colder, a draft crawling up my skin. Behind me, I heard the sound of fingers tapping, a rapid, erratic typing. The printers hummed, shooting out paper after paper, each sheet covered in distorted letters, random numbers, and broken symbols. I picked one up with trembling hands. Among the chaos of characters, a single line stood out clearly. "You shouldn't be here." My stomach lurched, bile rising to my throat. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the floor once again, heavy and absolute. Then, faintly, a low voice. "Go back to your desk." It came from nowhere and everywhere, carried by the air conditioning vents, by the walls, by the carpet under my feet. My desk! The thought chilled me. I looked back. Across the expanse of cubicles, my workspace stood dimly lit by the tiny desk lamp I'd left on. But I was not alone there. A dark silhouette sat in my chair, perfectly still, facing my computer monitor. Even from a distance, I could see the faint glow outlining its shoulders, its head tilted unnaturally to the side, as if listening. I froze, unable to move. The figure slowly raised its head, and though I couldn't see its face clearly, I felt its gaze pierce straight through the office gloom into me. My knees weakened, the office door was locked, the elevator wouldn't work, the cubicles were alive with unseen presences, and on the 9th floor, I finally understood. Overtime was never meant to end! I was about to shut down my computer when a sudden notification popped up on my screen. The clock in the corner showed 10:37 p.m., far too late for office matters. Yet the subject of the email froze me in place. Mandatory meeting, 11th floor, 11 p.m. My heart skipped a beat. I was only a junior administrative staff, not a manager, not a director. Why was my name included on the attendance list? At first, I wanted to ignore it, but curiosity mixed with unease made my hands tremble. The lights on other floors had already gone dark. Only my floor still glowed faintly. I walked toward the elevator, and as the doors slid open, I felt the hair on my arms stand on end. My reflection in the metallic surface looked wrong, paler, older, as if carrying burdens I had never lived through. When I reached the 11th floor, the atmosphere instantly tightened around me. The lights weren't fully on, only a dim yellow glow that seemed deliberately arranged. At the far end of the corridor, the conference room door was slightly ajar. From inside, I heard faint murmurs, dozens of voices speaking at once, but too synchronized to be real conversation. My legs grew heavy as I pushed the door open. The long meeting table was already full of people, but none of them had clear faces. Every one of them was blurred, shrouded in mist, except for their eyes. Their eyes were sharp, hollow, and fixed straight on me, unblinking. At the head of the table stood a man in a perfectly tailored black suit. His thin smile froze me in place. "Thank you for coming," he said, his deep voice echoing, even though the microphone on the desk was turned off. "We need you to continue the work that remains unfinished." I didn't recognize him. He wasn't a director nor a superior from any division I knew, yet the others bowed their heads toward him in respect. The air in the room turned icy cold, so sharp that my breath became visible. Somehow, my body moved on its own, guiding me toward the nearest empty chair. On the desk in front of me was a crimson folder with my name on the cover. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sentence written in thick black ink. "Mandatory presence. Exit not guaranteed." The moment I read that sentence, the room grew eerily silent. The faceless figures stopped whispering, their heads turning toward me in unison. I felt their gaze pierce through me, even though they had no visible features. My throat tightened, as if invisible hands were pressing against it. The man in the black suit leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. "Sign it," he said calmly, gesturing to the folder in front of me. His voice was not a request, but a command. "Once you do, you will belong here. You will understand." My instincts screamed at me to run. I pushed the folder away, shaking my head. "I don't belong here," I whispered, my own voice sounding foreign, trembling. For a split second, the room darkened, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the light. When it returned, the figures were no longer seated. They stood, circling the table slowly, their blurred faces twitching, distorting like static on a broken television. I staggered back toward the door, but when I grabbed the handle, it wouldn't budge. Cold sweat dripped down my temple. The murmurs returned, louder now, but this time they weren't in unison. They whispered my name over and over, hundreds of voices overlapping until it felt like they were inside my skull. Stay! Don't leave! You're one of us now! I slammed my fist against the door, my knuckles aching. Let me out! My voice cracked, swallowed by the chorus of whispers. The man in the black suit walked toward me slowly, his head echoing unnaturally loud. He stopped just inches away, and for the first time, his face flickered, no longer blurred, but a distorted version of mine. Older, hollow, dead. My body froze. It was me, or what I could become. The folder on the table flipped open by itself, its pages fluttering like wings. On the last page, words began to carve themselves into the paper as if written by an invisible hand. You are already here. You never left. At that moment, the lights went out completely. The last thing I heard was the sound of chairs dragging closer to me, surrounding me in the dark. When the lights died, the darkness was absolute. I couldn't even see my own hands trembling in front of me. Yet the whispers grew louder, pressing against my eardrums until I wanted to claw them out. Cold air swirled around me, and then, one by one, their icy hands touched my shoulders, my arms, my back. I froze, too terrified to breathe. Then a faint glow appeared at the far corner of the room, like a candle flickering in the void. I ran toward it, pushing past the unseen bodies that pressed against me. The glow revealed another door, one I had never noticed before. Unlike the polished glass entrance, this door was old, wooden, and cracked. Without thinking, I pulled it open. What lay beyond was not another hallway of the building. It was a staircase spiraling downward into complete darkness. The smell of damp earth and rust filled my lungs. Behind me, I heard the faceless figures shuffling closer. The man in the black suit spoke again, his voice cutting through the chaos. There is no escape, only continuance. I stumbled down the stairs, desperate, ignoring the sting of splinters on my hands as I clung to the wooden railing. Each step I took echoed too long, as if the staircase had no end. My breathing grew ragged, my chest burned, and then I tripped. My body fell hard against solid floor. When I opened my eyes, I was back at my desk. The computer screen glowed softly, showing the time, 8:03 a.m. Sunlight spilled across the office. People chatted casually around me as if nothing had happened. I gasped for air, clutching my chest. Had it all been a nightmare? Relief washed over me until I noticed the folder sitting on my desk. The same crimson cover, my name written across it in black. My hands trembled as I opened it. The page inside was blank, except for one fresh line written at the bottom. Attendance confirmed. Welcome back. I looked up. Across the office, at the reflection in the glass partition, I saw myself sitting at my desk. But that version of me wasn't moving. It was staring, smiling faintly, just like the man in the black suit. It was already past midnight, yet I was still at my desk, finishing the report my boss demanded before morning. The 15th floor office was deserted, just me, surrounded by silence so heavy that the humming of the air conditioner sounded like thunder. My eyes burned, my body was exhausted. Finally, I shut down my laptop and muttered, "Enough! I'll finish the rest tomorrow." With a sigh of relief, I packed my things and walked toward the elevator. The corridor stretched unnaturally long. Fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, making the shadows on the walls shift as if alive. Every step I took echoed sharply, bouncing back like someone else was following right behind me. I froze and turned around. Nothing. only rows of dark, empty cubicles. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the elevator button. The steel doors slid open almost instantly, too quickly, as if the elevator had been waiting just for me. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something was wrong. The air was freezing, much colder than outside. A faint scent of rust mixed with dampness seeped from the metallic walls. I pressed L for the lobby, and the doors closed with a heavy screech. The elevator began its descent slowly. 14, 13, 12. Leaning against the wall, I just wanted to get to the ground floor as soon as possible. But suddenly, the elevator jerked violently, nearly throwing me forward. The digital panel flickered between 10 and 9, then went completely dark. I pressed the buttons frantically, but none of them responded. My stomach dropped, ears ringing. The sensation was clear. The elevator was still moving, but not downward in the way it should. It felt like it was heading somewhere deeper. The air changed. A cold draft swept through the cabin, carrying the earthy smell of wet soil. Impossible, I thought. Elevators were sealed. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, but the screen lit up on its own, displaying distorted letters in some unknown language. Then it went black again. The lights inside the cabin dimmed and flickered erratically. For a brief second, in the stuttering glow, I saw something standing in the corner. A tall, pale figure without a face, just watching me. I blinked hard, and it vanished when the light steadied. My heart pounded so violently it hurt. Sweat ran cold down my back. I slammed the emergency button, praying to hear a human voice. But it wasn't a human voice that answered. From the tiny speaker came whispers, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, overlapping and crawling into my ears. They grew louder and louder until I had to press my palms against my head. The whispers from the speaker rose into a deafening chorus, words I couldn't understand, layered one over another like a swarm of insects inside my skull. Then, silence. The elevator lurched, and instead of continuing down, it jolted sideways with a sickening force, as if sliding through a tunnel no building should contain. My knees buckled, and I clung to the railing, gasping for breath. The panel above the doors lit up again, but instead of numbers, it displayed symbols, twisted lines that looked carved rather than digital, glowing faintly red. My heart hammered in my chest. I pressed every button I could, desperate, but the lights ignored me. The elevator moved steadily, humming, deeper and deeper into nowhere. Finally, with a heavy clang, it stopped. The door shuddered, then slid open, not to the familiar lobby, but to a hallway I had never seen before. The air that drifted in was damp, heavy with the stench of mold and stagnant water. Dim yellow bulbs hung from the ceiling, some flickering, others burned out, casting long, broken shadows. Against my better judgment, I stepped out, my shoes sinking slightly into the wet concrete floor. The hallway stretched in both directions, impossibly long, like an abandoned underground passage. My office building didn't have basements this deep, I was sure of it. Each step echoed unnaturally, delayed, as if something was walking half a second behind me. I kept looking back, but the elevator doors had already closed, vanishing into the wall as if they had never been there. Fear gnawed at me, but the silence was worse. I thought I heard dripping water, but then it turned into something else. Soft tapping, like fingernails against metal. It grew louder the further I went, until I saw a row of office chairs scattered along the hallway, overturned and broken, as if dragged there. On one of the chairs lay my own office ID card. My throat tightened. I had it with me in my bag. I had checked it moments ago. I reached for the card with trembling fingers, but before I could touch it, the tapping stopped. The silence was crushing. Then, from the far end of the hallway, I saw movement. A silhouette staggering slowly toward me. Its body bent at impossible angles, its head lolling loosely to one side. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt anchored to the wet floor. The figure drew closer. The dim light revealed its face, or rather the absence of one. Smooth, pale skin stretched where its features should have been, except for a wide, unnatural grin, carved from ear to ear, bleeding fresh as if cut moments ago. It lifted a hand, crooked and trembling, pointing directly at me. That was enough. My body finally obeyed, and I ran. My footsteps splashed through the damp corridor as I sprinted blindly, the air thick with rot and rust. The sound of my breath echoed louder than the pounding in my chest, but beneath it, I could still hear something else, the slow, dragging scrape of feet following me. No matter how fast I ran, the sound never fell behind. It was as though the hallway stretched endlessly, feeding on my desperation. My eyes darted around for an escape. Doors lined the walls, but every one I tried was locked, handles cold and unyielding. At last I found one slightly ajar. With a violent shove, I forced it open and stumbled inside. The room was dim, filled with old filing cabinets and scattered papers that looked decades old. A single fluorescent light flickered weakly, buzzing like an insect. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath, but my relief didn't last long. The scraping grew louder, closer, until it stopped right outside. The door shivered under a gentle push, then another. I pressed my weight against it, praying it would hold. Suddenly, the light above me burst, plunging the room into darkness. My pulse spiked. From the blackness came a whisper, this time clear. "You shouldn't have stayed." The voice wasn't outside anymore. It was right behind me. I spun, clutching at the air, but the room was empty. Empty except for the cabinets, now slightly ajar, as if something had moved within them. Papers began to flutter on their own, rustling like dry leaves, though there was no wind. I backed into a corner, trembling, when the wall behind me pulsed, soft, like flesh instead of concrete. That was when I realized this place wasn't a building at all. It was alive. Panic overtook me, and I bolted back through the door. To my shock, the hallway was gone. Instead, I found myself in the elevator again, its metallic walls groaning as if they were breathing. The doors slammed shut without me touching them, and the floor indicator lit up once more, numbers this time, but counting backward. 5, 4, 3, 2. When the elevator jolted to a stop, I braced myself for another nightmare, but the doors slid open to reveal the familiar lobby of my office. Morning light streamed through the glass, and the guard at the front desk looked up, surprised. "Working all night, huh?" he said casually, as if nothing had happened. I stumbled out, clutching my bag, my clothes damp and filthy, but the world around me was normal, too normal. As I walked out of the building, I checked my bag to reassure myself. That was when I froze. Inside, resting neatly on top of my laptop, was the office ID card I had seen in that underground hallway. The one I should never have been able to bring back. My stomach twisted with dread. The whispers still lingered in my head, faint but clear. "You didn't leave. You never will."